What's up, everyone? CanCannGrow here. So this is some documentation that came with the light. It was actually just on the underside of this wooden piece. Had I opened it from the other side, I would have seen it in the last video. So what we have here is just the warranty information card. All I'm going to say on that is one of the big changes I feel in recent years for Mars Hydro is that they do have facilities in North America, I believe in Canada and the US, that they are able to service their products. So if you have a warranty claim, it's much easier than it may have been in the past to get, to make use of that warranty. So, which is a really positive thing. Now, this is, I guess, just a basic info card on the SP250. So just as a reminder, this is the Mars Hydro SP250 light that we are reviewing here. And now we're going to talk a little bit about some of these numbers. I'm going to try and help you understand some of them. Let's quickly go through. I apologize if this bores some people, but there are some people that are very interested in not only knowing what the numbers are, but understanding what they mean. So okay, so right here, here are the first important numbers. This is the amount of wattage at 120 volts. Now, I'm in Canada and we're 120 volts. I believe it's the same in the US. If you are in Europe, I believe you're under 240 or 220. I apologize to my European viewers if I messed that up, but here we're 120. So it says 224 watts plus or minus 5%. We're going to test those numbers. We're going to test a lot of these numbers. I'm just sharing with you what they are promoting, or the numbers that they're listing on their documentation or marketing material with the light. So 224 watts. And that is, they're saying that it uses 1.930 amps at 120 volts. Just to give you a basis of comparison, my 630 watt ceramic metal halides are at about just under 5.5 amps at the wall, although I haven't actually tested that with a meter, which I probably will just for the purposes of comparison. Now, clearly that's a much larger light and much more powerful, but anyways, this one in particular for 2x4 space, 1.93 amps. Color spectrum, so there is a wide range of different diodes in here. This particular light, as opposed to older Mars Hydro lights, is what you would call a full spectrum light. Mars Hydro's early lights were more in the blurple space, kind of purplish light. The idea behind that was focusing a little bit more on the red spectrum, similar to what you would get from an HPS light, because it was believed, and it's still a fact, that the plant uses benefits from a little bit more red spectrum in flower. But in recent years, I feel, and I believe the science shows, that full spectrum white light is much more of a well-rounded and much more beneficial option, and Mars Hydro has gone that route with this. And to do that, they have several different diodes in here. They do have a couple UV diodes. This is actually, this range of spectrum from 380 to 410 is actually UVA. So there is also UVB and UVC. Both are actually, so they're a little bit lower on the nanometer range, but they're definitely more damaging. And UV as a whole is, I don't want, for lack of a better way, a bit of a dangerous light spectrum, but it has been studied anyways, that UVA is beneficial to the plants in creating a certain amount of stress to help them produce a little bit better with regards to cannabinoids and so on and so forth. Then you have the deep red, which is between the 650 and 660, which is at the high end of the PAR range. And you have infrared, which is higher than 700, in this case 730 to 740, which again, it is believed that infrared will help with developing better quality flower. And then this speaks to the color temperature of the entire light. I'm going to be honest, I believe what they're saying here is there is a mixture of 3,000 to 3,200 Kelvin and 6,000 to 6,500 Kelvin. This is the white light, the 3,000 3,200 K, where the 6,000 to 6,500 Kelvin is a little bit more towards the blue side and what you would traditionally use more in veg. Traditional HID lights that would operate in that spectrum would be, metal halides, and actually the 6500 spectrum is what I use in the T5 lights that I have in my mother room. So I guess what they're saying here is there's a combination of both these ranges of color temperatures. And as we mentioned a little bit earlier, this does have a Meanwell driver, which is great because it's a very high quality driver. It is the ELG series, which is one step down from Meanwell's top end series of drivers, which is the HLG. But it is still a very good, respectable driver. I believe it's how Mars Hydro is able to keep costs down with their units. It is a dimmable driver. And one of the largest differences really with the HLG and the ELG series is the warranty. The warranty on the HLG is 7 years versus the 5 years for the ELG. And that is because I guess I'm going to assume, because I don't know off the top of my head, that it's a little bit better quality of parts that might be used and a little bit better maybe production process, I believe. Just again, I'm kind of thinking off the top of my head from previous research. I believe that the ELG is a little bit, it's produced on the production line versus the HLG, which is, I believe, produced by hand. But again, don't quote me on that. The bottom line is, although the ELG is one step down, it is a very high quality driver. They also save a little bit of money on using Epistar LEDs versus the higher end, or what is considered the higher end LEDs, which are the Samsung LEDs, the Osram, and some of the Crees. So, but Epistar, in my research, has proven to be a quality LED diode. And now, as far as longevity, that's yet to be seen. It does say here that these are rated for over 50,000 hours of use, but only time will tell on that. Okay, so those are just some of those numbers. Now, some of the more important numbers to people, which is PAR. Now, this is where I want to kind of help clear some stuff up for people. PAR is really just a measurement of light output between a certain wave, a certain range in wavelength from 300 to 700 nanometers. Now, PAR is measured in PPF, as you see in the middle there. PPF, so PAR stands for photosynthetic active radiation, and it is measured in PPF. In totality, it's measured in PPF. PPF stands for photosynthetic photon flux. Sorry, bit of a tongue twister. But so, and then the other measurement, which I think you see on the back here, is PPFD. So if I was just going to try and explain this, the best way I've actually heard this explained, which I like, is that ppf is the total amount of PAR that is emitted by the light per second. It's measured in micromoles per second, or some may call it U-moles per second. And let's say that the PAR is a drop of water. The amount of water the entire light puts out, or would drop, I guess, in that analogy, would be the ppf. And the amount of water that would hit a one particular spot, as in this chart, is the measurement of PPFD. Because if we looked at these diodes, and using that analogy, we would look at these diodes as a bit of a spray, so it sprays water out. The total amount of water that came out per second would be the PPF reading. But obviously, if each of these is spraying out like this, there's going to be overlap, and more drops will be hitting certain spots. So here in the middle, you have all of these diodes spraying out. So obviously here in the middle, there's a lot of water being sprayed out, maybe all the way from out here, coming this way, and all the way out here. So you would have a larger concentration of water in the middle versus out here on the ends, where here these diodes would be spraying out this way and there wouldn't be any overlap. So there's much less water, or what we're talking about, PPFD, out here. So PPFD is the measurement of how much water lands on one particular spot. And water, in terms of the light, are the photons. So, which I probably should have clarified a little earlier, but forgive me on that. So anyways, PPFD is how many photons are landing on one spot, whereas the PPF is the amount of PAR in photons that the light puts out per second. The PPFD is measured in micromoles or U-moles per meter squared per second. And that's where, most people feel, they look at these charts, and this is how a lot of people kind of judge their lights. What it's saying on this chart is there in the very middle, in the black, it's saying that it is 632 ppfd in the middle, and that is at 0 inches. And then at 6 to 12 inches, it spreads a little bit more, where you're getting 604, 595, 568, 582 at those points of PPFD. And so what, let me backtrack a little bit. This is 6 to 12 inches from center. This is 12 to 24 inches from center, and this is 18 to 36 inches from center. All of these readings are taken at a height of 18 inches above the canopy. So that's what those readings are. So again, using our bit of a light spray water analogy, that is how much droplets of water or photons are landing on each of those spaces, and those are the distances. We're going to, in future, I'm going to go ahead and test these once I have a PAR meter handy to me. And so this is just a small point of reference in what's on their marketing material. So I know this video is getting a little bit long now, but I warned you, some of this information is important to some. The other measurement that a lot of light manufacturers are using now is what you see there, PPE, which is basically the efficacy of the light. So I apologize that I don't remember right off the top of my head what the PPE stands for, but it really is the efficacy. To kind of explain that a little bit, basically what that measurement is how much of the electricity in watts is actually used by the light. So when you have a number like 224 watts, not all of that is being used by these diodes. Some of them are being used by the driver. Obviously, a certain amount of power is being used by the driver. But the more of that, and then some of that electricity is also dissipated and comes out in heat, measured in BTUs, which is why you have all these heat sinks here. But the more of that electricity, what that number tells you, the 2.57 that they're saying there per micromoles per joule, they're basically saying it's a measurement. They're saying that that measures how many of these watts are being actually used for lighting purposes, which is why you actually have the light. So the higher that efficacy number is, the better the better it is. The consensus is that it is a better light because it is, and it also means that it's better on your pocketbook because you're not wasting energy. So 2.57 micromoles per joule is quite high. Some of the higher end lights are right around that figure. The highest I've seen, I believe, is the HLG quantum board, which boasts an efficacy of 2.7, I believe, and I believe that is their 550 V2 R spec. So definitely be about 2.6 or 2.7. So this is quite a high claim they have here. When I do my own number testing here, we're going to definitely put that number to the test. The bottom line, though, is even if it's close to that number for a budget-friendly light, that is quite impressive, okay? So I apologize ahead of time if I didn't explain that efficacy number in simple enough terms. Maybe I'll revisit it, or if you have any questions, go ahead and post them. And then the weight I mentioned earlier in the video, or in the last video, if I make this as part 2, is they have the net weight, which is, I believe, just the light. And I found this a little amusing, but I don't believe they mean grow weight. I think they meant gross weight, which includes the driver, and that's 5.07 kilograms, or just over 11 pounds for the light. So that's the weight there, and I think the 3.935 kilograms, I think it's just under 9 pounds of the net weight of the light. Anything else? There's warranty, limited 3-year warranty. It has operating requirements between certain temperatures. I believe that IP65 is that waterproof rating that I mentioned in either the last video or earlier in this video. And that, I believe, is all the numbers. This is a spectrum chart. If it's of interest to you, it just shows you how much light is being emitted of a certain spectrum. Again, between 300, here it says 380 through to 780. What's visible to the human eye is between 300, oh, I should correct this. I think I said 300 earlier. It's actually 400 to 700 nanometers that's visible to the human eye. So anything outside of that is not visible. And then on the lower end, you have the different levels of UV. And on the higher end, you have the different levels of far red or infrared once you get higher. So anyways, I'm not going to dive into that here. So that has been quite a long video. I really hope that some of that information is useful to you. Like I said, I just wanted to kind of give my own little spin. I wanted to make sure I did Mars Hydro justice, but more importantly, I wanted to make sure I did my viewers justice in helping them understand, in case you're considering this, or if we do reviews in the future of other lights, so when we're comparing them, you understand what those numbers are. Okay, so that's it for this video. I'll do another video where I'll actually turn it on and show you how the light looks once it's on, and once I've hung it, where it's going to be. Thank you so much for tuning in to this point with this review of the Mars Hydro SP250. I do want to also mention that it really helps the channel if you decide you want to purchase this light, that if you could use the discount code that I've been provided. It provides, in my opinion, a nominal discount, but any amount of discount is definitely a help. It's a 3% discount, but more importantly, how it helps the channel if you are going to purchase the light is it lets them know that you possibly purchase the light because you saw it here on this channel, which goes a long way to help support me and this channel. So I really appreciate that. Get used to that little public service announcement because I'll probably mention it more times in the future. Apologies ahead of time, but again, I want to make sure that I am doing this review and being fair to Mars Hydro, who, in my opinion, have been quite kind to me. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I will talk in the next video about how I plan to use this light in my grow. Until then, this is CanCannGrow signing out. Cheers.